Welcome to Pages and Pods. Through parchment, papyrus, scriptures, and legend, the figure of Moses comes to us in fragments, scattered across the centuries. Yet, when those pieces are gathered and stitched together, they reveal not merely a prophet or lawgiver, but the beginning of Western civilization, realized through a child born under the shadow of empire, destined to change the spiritual imagination of the West. When taken as a whole, all accounts show that Moses emerges as a child born into the Egyptian world of Pharaoh's house. Rabbinic accounts from the Midrashim place the date of his birth during the Amarna age, during the reign of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who defied the priesthood and proclaimed to the world that there was only one almighty, ineffable God. Akhenaten had 7 daughters, and within the auspices of spiritual science, one gave birth to Moses. His name is the first mystery. In ancient Egypt, Musa, with variations such as Meses or Messe, meant born of or child of. Many great rulers carried this divine formula in their names. Tutmosis was born of Thoth. Rameses was born of Ra. Amosa was born of the moon god. But in the name Moses, the God who should have stood before the word has vanished into time. Some have suggested Tahmosa, born of Ta, Lord of divine speech. If so, the irony is beautiful. The child born under the sign of sacred speech would become the man who spoke for God. But here the story turns, for Scripture names his mother as Jochebed, who placed him in the Nile to save him from the pharaonic decree to kill all the firstborn sons of the Israelites. But this account faces 2 troubling facts. For the infant set adrift upon the Nile mirrors the ancient legend of Sargon of Akkad, a story well known to all the ancients. Also, Akhenaten, a visionary pharaoh whose revolution in worship shaped Moses' own spiritual awakening and prepared him for acceptance among the Hebrew tribe, was simply not that kind of pharaoh. Ancient stories often work as metaphors for deeper meaning. In this case, the birth of Moses compares his hidden glory to the legend of Sargon the Great, while also foreshadowing the coming eclipse of Egyptian spiritual culture. It points ahead to a later age of Israelite persecution under the pharaohs who would follow Akhenaten's failed spiritual revolution, especially Horemheb, Seti, and the terrible Ramses II. Akhenaten was not a murderous pharaoh whose only desire was for power and war. He was a ruler whose attention was always drawn to the glory of God, and his mission was to gather the many people of Egypt beneath one divine light. He proclaimed that all Egypt should turn towards Aten, the hidden and ineffable creator, and by forbidding the temple priests to serve the old gods, he opened a wound between the throne and the priesthood that would never heal. Moses grew up in the court of Akhenaten, where from childhood he heard the divine wisdom of this revolutionary pharaoh. There is only one God. But soon his parents and the court discovered the flaw that would alter his destiny. His tongue could not shape words properly with the perfection demanded of the priests or magicians and royal officials. The path of temple prayer, sacred incantation, and public command was closed to him, leaving one narrow gate, the life of a scribe. There in silence, Moses learned to listen. He heard the hidden formulas of priests and magicians, watched as currents of power moved through Pharaoh's court, and by his youth had become what the rabbis wrote about him. He was wise, learned, and already acquainted with both the ways of the Egyptian magicians and the statesmanship of empire. Biblical scripture tells us that Moses was nursed by Jochebed, one of the Israelite servants of Pharaoh's daughter. As we will see, she will become his mother, but at that time she was one of the servants. She had recently given birth to Miriam, the great prophetess of the Exodus, and was able to be the nursemaid of Moses, giving him the nourishment that Pharaoh's daughter either couldn't or did not want to do. Through these Hebrew servants, Moses learned the language and sorrows and the secret memory of the tribes who would one day claim him as their own. He might have remained forever an obscure scribe in Pharaoh's court had death not come for Akhenaten and thrown the 18th dynasty into upheaval. History preserves only scattered fragments of the end of Akhenaten's vision. Egypt passed for a few years under the rule of the female pharaoh, Neferuaten. On her death, leadership went to a pharaoh known only by the title Ai, and at last into the hands of Horemheb, the soldier king determined to scrape Akhenaten's name, God, and memory from the very stones of Egypt. For the servants of Aten, these were dangerous days. For Moses, they may have been fatal had the Hebrew women of the royal house not saved him from Horemheb's purge. Jochebed brought him to her tribe, the priestly tribe of the Levites. Such fate could only be divinely inspired. The Levites received him with caution, for he had come from Pharaoh's house, but he could read and write, and they were astonished when he spoke of one God, creator of heaven and earth, in terms that resonated with the children of Jacob. Miriam, the daughter of Jochebed, insisted that her father Amram bring him into their house. And here's another mystery of biblical text. When we are told that Moses fled Egypt because he had killed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, in fact, he killed an Egyptian, but not one made of flesh and blood, but the one living inside of him. He knew that to belong to the tribes of Israel, that he must forsake his Egyptian past and become a descendant of Jacob. His parents were undoubtedly dead, and the Egypt he knew had not only turned on him, but was now persecuting the people giving him shelter. Miriam finished the job of the death of that Egyptian by changing his name. Her clairvoyance saw what others could not, that her new brother would be a great leader. She played a clever trick with his Egyptian name, Thutmose. She called him Moses, which in Hebrew means to draw out. Her mother drew him out of Pharaoh's court, and her clairvoyance told her that he would one day draw Israel out of Egypt. Moses now had a new family, with Aaron as his brother and Miriam as his sister. Amram was impressed by his ability to read and write and work with numbers, and especially astonished that Moses could read and speak Hebrew, a language he had learned from Jochebed and the other Hebrew servants. As the priestly tribe, the Levites were often called upon to settle disputes, and when tensions broke out amongst Israelites near the border of Cush, Aaron and Moses were sent to help resolve the arguments. It was while Moses and Aaron were near the border of Cush that another mystery, preserved in rabbinic exegesis, began to unfold. Moses was almost 18, and because he knew the courtly Egyptian language, some Israelites asked him to help negotiate trade with the Cushites. Tension between Cush and Egypt were rising, and war was already on the horizon. And during the negotiations, Moses overheard the Cushites speaking of an approaching battle, and without thinking, warned them that they would surely be defeated. This enraged them, and they threatened to kill him. Moses tried to explain, but his words failed him. So Aaron stepped forward and told them that Moses had grown up in Pharaoh's court and knew exactly what he was talking about. Hearing this, they called him a spy and would have killed him on the spot if a local commander had not overheard the exchange. He ordered Moses to explain in detail why he believed the Egyptians would win. Moses described how the Egyptian army would draw the Cushite forces into a trap, a simple strategy they had used against many enemies before. The commander realized Moses was right and brought him before the king of the Cushites. Jewish oral tradition tells us that Moses became a great general in the Cushite army and even married a daughter of the king. But I wasn't convinced by the veracity of the story, and it was only speculated by one rabbi. However, many traditions support his time in Cush, so it's possible that young Moses may have become a valued advisor because he understood Egyptian tactics from his years as a scribe in Pharaoh's court. According to the Jewish historian Josephus, he was given Tharbis, the king's daughter, in marriage. But over time, conflicts arose between Moses and the king's court. Moses and Aaron had to flee back into Egypt, leaving behind an angry Cushite king. But the situation was dire for him in Egypt. Pharaoh, who had learned that Moses had aided the enemy, vowed to kill him. As for his Cushite wife, they had no children, and they were divorced. This brings us from the mystery of Moses' birth to the threshold of his encounter with Zipporah. From here, Aaron helps him escape Pharaoh and cross into Midian, where the next chapter of his life begins, a story I explore fully in my podcast about Zipporah. I shared the link in the show notes. His later confrontation with Ramses II now makes deeper sense to me. He knew the language of the court, the rights of the priests, the illusions of the magicians, and the hidden weaknesses of a pharaoh. I hope this has shown you something new. It certainly did help me see the story clearly. So before you click onward, subscribe to my channel. Also, leave a comment. I ventured far into spiritual science and follow the hints left in the passing comments of history. I think I'm right, and I want to know if you think so too.